The Nova Guest List Podcast.
With Kieran McGuinness.
The very best in indie, alternative and homegrown music. From the seriously addictive Radio Nova.
Yes, it is Radio Nova, and this is Kieran McGuinness, and this is the All-Irish Hour. We have a little special because we have Paul Noonan from Bell X1, who is, with his wonderful band, releasing their first album in 7 years, and it's called Merciful Hour. Paul.
Yes.
Tell me. So it was out last Friday, the 26th, and what, like it's been 7 years, it's your 8th album, it's been a while. What does it feel like to have it out?
It feels wonderful. It all kind of happened really suddenly towards the end of the 7 year process. It feels like there was no mad sort of prelude, which we kind of wanted. We wanted the record out before the shows that were about to start over the summer. I think after the last record, I think we were, it was 2018. We finished touring that. The last thing we did with the record, we did a run around Europe with Tori Amos, playing beautiful concert halls. And it was, I think after that stint in Europe, we just felt kind of creatively and emotionally kind of knackered with the band. And just, I think we all separately came to the idea that we're going to take some time off and do other things. And I think as you kind of move through life, you become interested in other things. The band has become sort of one of the many things that we do. It's still very much the mothership, I think, but it doesn't have the sort of singularity and sort of our 20s, of our early 20s, where it was the only thing we were doing. I think musically, we've all over the years done other things and brought back very valuable influences to the band. Dave made another Join Me in the Pines record in the time. I made the Houseplants record with Dahi. I went back and did a master's in music therapy in this time, and it's all these things I do feel when we did come to make Merciful Hour. I mean, some of the songs have been kicking around for years, and some of them were kind of were born in the moment of trying to make sense of what we had. I think that's what we needed to do. We had all these songs in various states of undress, and we needed somebody to come along and go, this is what you have, and this is what you should do with what you have.
But it's also hard being in a band for a long time, because there's becomes this build-up of emotional maths that you're doing. You're always kind of having... behind every conversation and decision is all the decisions and conversations you had before, and sometimes you just need a reset from that, I think. Yeah, I mean, it becomes, we've often joked about it being like the familiar contempt that you can have for your bandmates is very like the dynamic within a family in some ways, Totally. So the album's great. It's a really great listen. I think that it's rich. I think that's one thing about the album. Between all the songs and sounds and styles, there's a lot of richness there. It's eclectic. It sounds very much. It doesn't sound at all throwaway, and I don't mean that. I don't mean that it sounds. It sounds like a project. Like it sounds like work. Like there's great craft got into it and thought. And sometimes I think with later albums, not that you'd ever be coasting, but you'd draw on everything you've done before, but this feels like it feels like coming back after a reset with bringing back the knowledge, which is something you said, which makes sense. But the theme that I kind of took out of it was traveling together, a group of people traveling together.
Okay.
I think whether it's like spacewalk, skipping, walking, lighting your way, all that kind of stuff, bridge and tunnel, movement, all that kind of stuff. But it does feel like it's the travel, it's the getting there is the theme across the album. Would you feel that? Or
I think there's the narratives are widely disparate. Some of them are very personal songs, some of them are sort of taking a sort of fragment of a story or a moment that you might have witnessed and running with it. To me, one of the things that ties it together is we worked with the arranger Éanna Brennan and a string quartet called the Dowry Strings on on a lot of the songs, who we've been playing with for a few years now, and sort of doing shows where the three of us strip back and the strings come in, and they pretty much play most of the music to the songs. So we became really interested in what would happen. So that was retrofitting strings into the older catalogue. So with this record, what we wanted to do was very much have the strings involved from the ground floor and leave space in whatever we were doing for the strings to fill. And I do think there is a sort of the strings can bring such it can evoke such sort of really tap into that sense of sort of magic and mystery and the unexplained and the irrational, and I that's something that we really wanted to lean into. The traveling thing, actually, as I've just kind of thought about it, like we love bands like War on Drugs and that sort of Tom Petty style of like 2-chord traveling tunes that just go on forever. So we kind of leaned into that with the strings. There's a couple of 6-minuters on there, which
there is a couple of 6-minuters.
You struggle with, are we being up our own arses here? And there's no one to police that though, because it's our label. There was no one to go, no, strip it to 3:30. So
what do we listen to a song? So the first single off the album was called "Haint Blue," and I thought it was like "He Ain't Blue," like he ain't blue, but it's not.
He
that.
Ain't heavy. Yeah. No, that's mad. So this is an example of taking a sort of fragment of something that sparked the imagination and running with it. In one of our early conversations, Dave and I, he'd been telling me about this podcast he was listening to about hoodoo culture in parts of the southern US. Again, very much kind of brought over from West Africa with the slaves. They had this very rich, I suppose, story culture of these ghosts and malevolent spirits that could mess with you, and one was called haint, which I suppose is a derivation of haunt. But to avoid the haint coming to your house, you could paint your porch blue, and the haint for some reason wouldn't be able to see your house. But the haint blue has become a shade that you still see a lot of porches in that part of the world painted. So I just thought it was a very evocative sort of story, and we ran with it.
No, right, yeah, that makes a lot of sense now, for the song. Thanks very much for that. That's a great introduction. Let's play Haint Blue by Bellax One from their new album, Merciful Hour. It's Nova.
The Nova Guest List Podcast with Kieran McGuinness. The very best in indie, alternative and homegrown music from the seriously addictive Radio Nova.